We're going to go ahead and get started with our Sleep More, Stress Less program. This is the culminating session that we have for you for today. Now, we are going to make note, yes, we do know we have technical difficulties. The monitor over my right shoulder is not working. We're going to do the best that we can to still portray the information. But if you have questions or things like that, please let us know. Anybody that's out online, we're going to answer any of your questions as well as we can. If there is a very pertinent question, then I will go ahead and portray that to Isabel. We want to make sure that the program is moving smoothly and that everybody is able to understand what's going on with the absence of information on the one projector. Now, today we're going to talk a lot about the practices to help you sleep more and stress less. Now, there are a lot of different components, but today's information is going to be the easily or most easily accessible and usable that you could do right now, tonight. And I'll just go ahead without any other hesitation or wasting of time, introduce Isabel Alfonsin-Vittoria. She's going to go ahead and present the last session of 2020 Sleep More, Stress Less program. Isabel?
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Our apologies again. I know that you're going to have to use a little bit of your right brain to see this quadrant, and I'm going to do the best I can to keep you informed of what you cannot see. Today, we're going to pick up where we left off, and it's going to hopefully test your retention abilities, because I am going to be testing you a little bit. You can't see that I'm going to be talking about the agenda because it's not there, but basically I'm going to be picking up with where we were, doing a retesting. Welcome everyone coming into the room. I'm going to also talk to you about some of the hormonal biological processes that are also involved in sleep, which we only talked about very briefly in session 1. We're going to talk about the most common sleep disorders, how we diagnose them. We're going to talk about taking action. So basically, what are the decisions that you can make? What are the implementations that you can undertake on your own? We're going to give you some ideas about some sleep aids and some resources, and hopefully you'll walk away feeling a little bit more informed. Okay, so that's the plan for today. This is the wheel that you saw last time. For those of you coming into the room, we are very aware that we are missing a part of the monitor. Unfortunately, we have reported it, and engineering is not able to repair it in time. So I'm going to be needing you to use and tap into that right brain to work a little harder today. But I think most of this is, we can get through this. I think we definitely have enough that we can work with the rest. This wheel we looked at last time is the wellness wheel. Nathan and I use it to teach. Do you remember what aspect of the wheel we were focusing? Where does sleep reside in the parts of the wheel that you can actually see? Do you remember where I focused last time? Close, but no cigar. There is an emotional component, but sleep particularly belongs in, who said? Somebody said something. Welcome. I heard something. Did anyone say? It's physical. It's in the physical realm, okay? Now, we talked about the fact that there are other components that affect sleep, but sleep is part of your physical life, okay? And yes, for those of you that just came in, we have an issue with the monitor. So we're having to get by as is. We will be sending you the slides at the end, so you're gonna have a complete image of what it is that I discussed. This is a test, and so it's kind of hard for you to see what the test is, but I ask you questions. And the question that I'm asking you is approximately how long, how many minutes does it take for you to fall asleep? I had told you that if your sleep happened between X number of minutes and X number of minutes, that it was good. Do you remember what those minutes were? 10. Close, close. 15 to 20, ding, 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 ding. All right. Good students. Good students. You had half the answer, and some of you had the complete answer. The next question is, how many hours of sleep should you get a day? What is the period of time? 7. From what to what was the range? 7 to 9. Great. Straight A students. Okay. In how long of a period? 24 hours, right? In a 24-hour period. So the next question is, what kind of sleep are you wanting to get? There's something that I said very specifically that was not duration, but what was the goal?
Well, we have to do the 4 cycles.
Right, we have to do all the cycles, and so it needs to be continuous, all right? We know that if we don't have continuity, duration is not sufficient. That's what we know. This one you should all be able to answer because you can all see it and you don't have to work that hard. You wake up feeling refreshed as if you have filled the tank. Good job, good job. You feel refreshed. You know what I mean. It's that's supposed to be an A+ for some of you, but unfortunately you just see the plus. It's there. I promise you it's there. You know what I'm talking about, right? When your feet hit the floor, you know the difference between a full tank and a tank that's less than full, right? When you're kind of like dragging yourself. So you should feel relatively refreshed, like everything is working. And you should look like that, nice and refreshed and pretty. Or handsome, depending on your gender. So this is the second part of the review. And unfortunately, it's hard because you can't see my questions. But here I'm asking you the National Sleep Index that I told you that we have in the United States, and it was from 0 to 100. Do you remember what grade we have as a nation? And that we've had the same index for the last 3 years. And it's how we know whether we're sleeping well or we're not sleeping well. 100 is the best you can get. Yes, do we have someone that knows the answer on Zoom? Perhaps, because the classroom is stumped. 76, 76. And it's not a bad number, okay? But remember that we want to inch closer to 100. That is how we are sleeping as a nation. And that's all as a result of that survey that I told you that the American Sleep Association does. So some of you got ahead of this a little bit while ago. I asked, you know, how many cycles of uninterrupted sleep do we have to have? 4. Good student, very good student. And sleep cycles are for how long of a duration, from how many minutes to how many minutes per cycle. Do you remember? Because they should last a particular period of time for you to actually get to the next stage. Okay, I hear 2 hours in the room. Does anybody have a different take on it? Okay, it is from 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Ding, ding, you share the answer. Okay, very good. And dreaming can only happen during what type of sleep? We have 2 different types of sleep. Do we remember what those different are? And they involve this. Rapid eye movement, right? REM sleep, okay? And in what stage do we dream? It's actually the 5th, okay? Which is right about the time that we wake up, right? Because we're becoming very lucid. So in what stage does the body typically reset all functions? Everything is ready, back in place and ready to go. 5, absolutely, that's the answer. So well done, students. Some of you that are quiet, I want to hear more from you. This is actually true, and I wanted to share it with you because I think it takes something anecdotal and it's kind of fun to poke at science. On the top, it actually says scientific evidence, but you can't see that. And this is actually true about Albert Einstein, who we know is one of the biggest, you know, and smartest brains that we've had in the field. And he was known for being rather eccentric, but one of the things he figured out was that his brilliance was made better by good sleep. So he's known to have slept 10 to 11 hours a day, and it helped him to be creative. And what we've learned is that his theory of relativity was in fact inspired by a dream. So there's truth to the fact that the more your brain is rested, the more creative it actually can be, and the more that you can produce. So it's good for you, good results. Not only do you feel better, okay, but you actually perform better. And I apologize because this one's going to be a little bit tough. But this is where I teach you that there are 2 systems that are working simultaneously in your sleep life. And they are the circadian rhythm, okay, which is something that you have no control over. This is actually just happening. And also your homeostatic level. Okay, so what do I mean? Every one of us has a biological clock, okay? And it exists without us having anything to do with it. Our bodies naturally have learned from our period of birth through now to know when it's time to be up and active and when it's time to sun down and sleep. And what mimics the biological clock? the sun and the moon. So these two systems are working together. Naturally, you know that we have a moment of wakefulness, right, where we have a little bit of energy. We start to feel that lull. And when do we start kind of going down? Usually midday, right? And so very much like the sun starts to set, so does the body. And it's important that you know your biological rhythms, because you're in a better position to tweak things depending on your energy level. There are people that are much more hyperactive and there are people that are a little bit slower, but these cycles are true universally. We all have them and they work together in tandem. So if your body, this is important for you to remember, if your body is naturally doing its job, one of the things that you're going to be able to control, right, is don't counter that. What do I mean by that? You'll see later when I go into sleep hygiene how you're going to have to use, your decision making to either honor the biological clock or to go against it. A good example would be you're feeling rather tired, your body's wanting to hit the bed, and instead you decide that you're going to actually turn on the TV and watch a movie. There's nothing wrong with watching a movie, but what is going to happen to the brain when it starts to see light and sound? It's going to be artificially confused as though, wait, isn't it getting dark now? So that's where you have agency. That's where you have the opportunity to make decisions to let the body do what it needs to do. This is another unfortunate, I apologize that you cannot see this, but this is an image that I was able to get for you that actually shows you both systems. Your biological clock also mirroring what I call the wake phase and the sleep phase of sleep. They literally work very similarly. So the day, the 24-hour cycle, mimics what your body is doing from sun up to sundown. This is taken from the work of Dr. Borbelli. He is, to date, the researcher that has done the most work in the world to understand this out of the University of Zurich Medical School. The last time that I checked, he had been able to accumulate 385 publications on this study. Any one of us watching this video that knows how hard it is to publish one scientific article understands what it's like to publish 385. And so he stands by this. I have confidence that this information is accurate. Again, a challenging visual, but I wanted you to see all the hormones that we have in our body that affect our stress level. Remember that one of the reasons that we're here to learn about our sleep is so that we can be less stressed. And so one of the things that I want you to know is that the body has different systems that will actually either accentuate stress or help you to mitigate stress. And if these hormones do not have a chance to recharge during your sleep, you're likely either going to be dragging a bit or eventually succumbing to some medical problem, okay? Here you see the adrenal glands, the kidneys, the brain, the pituitary gland. What I'm trying to tell you is that when we're really stressed out, these hormones fire. And what do you know when you're very stressed out? What is one thing that is difficult to do? Concentrate. What is another thing that is very difficult to do if you're anxious, nervous, scared? Sleep. Because these hormones are firing. They're not getting the rest that they need. Likely, this is also an image of the brain during sleep. And what you can't see here are the healthy hormones that are released by the brain at the time of your sleep. Oxytocin is a really great feel-good type of hormone, prolactin. If you don't get to sleep, these good hormones are not released. Melatonin, which is not up there for you to see. So it's important that the brain has enough time to actually produce the things that we actually need and not produce the things that actually make us sick. So what are those influences? Again, my apology, you cannot see that, but these hormonal influences on the body can be very harmful. I'll give you a good example that's not necessarily alarming, but we did talk about it last time. We talked about hot flashes, okay? For the women listening in, that usually happens during menopause, right? And those are times when women start to feel like they don't have a lot of control over their glands, their hormones. And so that's going to lead to an inability to sleep. That went backwards. So it's very important to have good sleep hygiene. In other words, it's very important that you put practices in place that you can actually control versus things that are happening in your body that you have no control over, such as menopause. Another one could be caused by recent childbirths. Mothers who have children, we remember, right, how difficult it is to have good sleep after that because we're paying attention to the needs of another. Our hormones are usually not in order. So it's very important to give time to the body to replenish. So this is where I'm beginning to talk about sleep hygiene. And unfortunately, you can't see everything that I'm listing up there. But what I'm starting out with is what can you actually control? You can control how much caffeine you intake, right? You can also control nicotine by not smoking. So there are just some things that are common sense that we can do less of that would help us to go to sleep. Create a good environment to sleep. In other words, make it nice, make it feel cozy, something that would make you want to give into it. Would you be comfortable sleeping in a room like this classroom? Why would it be difficult, do you think? And I know those of you that are watching from Zoom may not know, but this is a very bright yellow room with white bright lights. What would that do to our sleep? Think about it, the fact that the room is yellow, that it's daytime and that it's sunny. So I'm not saying go paint your room black like a cave, but I am saying create an ambiance that is sleep inducing. So lighting is very important. Also try to have a routine that you establish and that you follow so that that pattern can be learned. The pattern is going to be learned by the body via the biological clock. So the more you do things the same way, the better your body knows. How many of you use alarms to wake up in the morning? Oh, wow, almost everybody in the room. Zoom, I'd be interested to find out how many people who are watching feel that way. Is there anyone that doesn't use an alarm, that just wakes up? Okay, good job. Kudos over there. Again, and it's not a bad thing to use an alarm, but I think that if you actually maintain a routine and your body gets used to it, you wake up. I wake up every day without any alarm, and I wake up at the same time every day, regardless of where I am. It's only uncomfortable when I travel. When I travel and I'm in the West Coast, it's really uncomfortable. But the body gets used to routines, the biological clock memorizes it and repeats it every day. Remember I told you later on I would remind you about choice? Go to sleep when you're tired. Don't fight it. We see that a lot in our youth right now. A lot of our kids and adolescents and young adults, they will stay through all hours of the night awakened. And they go against the natural biological clock. Well, sleep deprivation can be so bad for you. Would you believe me if I told you that it could actually induce a psychotic episode? It can. It can. The brain is so confused that it loses touch between what's reality and what is not. So we must listen to the body when we're tired, assuming, you know, it's not an exception like New Year's or something like that. If your body's feeling the need to rest, give it the rest that it needs. This one, you know, is not as serious, but it's a good reminder that we shouldn't be looking at the clock just to get ourselves to go to sleep. It's a bad habit of, am I asleep yet? Am I asleep yet? You're looking at your devices. What do most of your devices have? Lighting, right? And what are you doing every time that you're referring to something or you're looking at something? You're activating the brain. So the best thing to do is to lay in bed with your eyes closed and maybe working on your breath so that you can actually convince the brain, hey, it's time to shut off. Use light to your advantage. If it's already dark, don't bring any lighting into the room. You don't need a night lamp at this point in your life unless you have an infant in the room and you needed to find your infant, or you have a special need that requires you to actually have a light path. If you don't need a light, don't bring a light into the bedroom after you're ready to go to sleep. Things to do. Of course, you can't see them, but obviously follow a consistent ritual, okay? Make sure that you do things the same every time so that you can actually see the best results. One of the things you can see up there is do not have meals late in the evening. Why would you think that that would be a sleep detractor? What would eating have to do with sleep? I'm hearing folks saying digestion. What was the other? New energy. Well, you're putting in nutrients. They have energy. They're going to stimulate. Your digestive system is going to have to start working. Well, what are you doing? You're telling the brain that it's time to stay up for that process. You're also going to get indigestion or heartburn, and that's not going to feel too good. You're also introducing calories at a very late time in the day. Nathan.
So then when you eat during Thanksgiving, why do you get tired?
Because you've overeaten. You've consumed way too many calories and not expended them. We tend to indulge a little bit too much on those days. So that's the reason why that happens. It's not that you're going to sleep because the body knows it's late. It's because you've over-consumed caloric intake without putting it to good work. Also, balanced fluid intake. Why balance? Some people like to have their glass of milk at bedtime because of the melatonin. Some people like to have a glass of water, which by the way is also a great idea. But why do you think we should balance it or limit our fluid intake? What did I talk about? Continuous sleep. If you have to go relieve your bladder, you're going to break the continuity of your cycle. So it's actually good to have fluid. It's just not good to have it so late that your bladder will want relief and awaken you. So you're trading the benefit of hydration with sleep deprivation. Critical that you don't have to sacrifice one for the other. What about exercising? Exercising is awesome. You know that Nathan always is telling us to move and stay active, and he's right. But what about exercising can also be a sleep detractor? What was that? It gives you energy. Well, you're mobilizing. So now what? Now you're stimulated. What else have you told the brain? It's time to go. It's time to go. It's very hard to come down off that because you have actually activated the hormones in your brain, and the endorphins are released, and you have all these feel-good feelings going through the body, and it's like, oh, you know what? I'm just gonna go and see what's happening on late night TV, and the next thing you know, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you didn't get enough sleep, so you've actually hurt yourself. This is one that is not on any scientific journal. This is the Isabel step, and what I mean by follow through is if you initiate, if you take the time, the energy to implement a good plan for your sleep, be consistent, stick with it. If you don't stick with it, it will not become a lifestyle change, and you will regress and you will suffer. So if you actually find something that works, keep doing it. And if all the things we've talked about don't work, you've given it your best, you've tried it all, there may be an issue, okay? And so you might need to consult your primary care physician to find out if there's some advice that they could give you, or a sleep specialist if you're fairly certain that something isn't right. Okay, you've tried everything, you've attempted to make changes, and you just couldn't do it on your own. This actually says choose healthy actions. And what I mean by that is own your life, own your sleep. You are the driver of your body, not the other way around. So don't fall victim to being passive about it. If something's wrong, it's your role to be, motivated to take care of yourself. No one can do it for you. We do live, though, in a time and age, I think you'll agree, that when you sit in front of the TV, what are you flooded with other than ads to buy things? What do we now see more than ever that influences what we're likely to do medically? I'll give you a hint. We see ads for medications, right? And we are, I hate to say it, as a Western society, a quick fix society, and we're all looking for fast tracking, fast way to lose weight, fast way to be happy, fast way to be thin. And we don't sometimes realize that there's some changes that we can make that don't require medical intervention. So that's what you're going to see here. It says, be careful about running to over-the-counter solutions when you may not need them. You might want to have more information, understand what is actually happening with you. Sometimes sleep disorders are sleep disorders, and sometimes sleep issues are a symptom of a different problem. And if you mask it with an over-the-counter medication, you might never realize that there's something actually wrong that you're not discovering. Does that make sense? It's like putting a Band-Aid when the situation warrants a surgical removal of something, but you've temporarily stopped the bleeding, but the problem's going to continue. The only way to know if you have a sleep disorder is to have an overnight study. Do you remember the polysomnograph that I showed you? That is the only time, the only way that you can actually do it. There are also blood studies. They check your folic acid, they check your B12, they check your thyroid function, they also check your magnesium levels, and that's how they know whether they're on to something or not. So you might go to the doctor and blood work may reveal that you actually have a sleep disorder, but it won't be confirmed until a polysomnograph. I apologize, this is a very heavy text slide, but it's about insomnia, which of course is the most common disorder that we face with sleep. It is the only one, however, that is treatable successfully, okay? All the others that I'm going to talk to you about are more challenging. This is obviously the inability to either go to sleep or stay asleep, and it's sometimes caused by meds. So before you introduce a medication, that's why you should consult with a physician. Sometimes allergy pills can cause a problem, antidepressants, steroids, drinking too much alcohol, too much caffeine are the cause of insomnia. Well, that can be remedied, right? Because if you consume, then you can also not consume that. Treatment. There are a lot of effective ways to treat insomnia. One of the actual most overlooked technique, it's actually therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. For short, we call it CBTI. It's actually a technique where we actually work with you, us therapists, and are able to reframe your relationship to sleep. It's underutilized. People are much more likely to go to the drugstore and get a sleep aid. Unfortunately, the sleep aid is not going to resolve the problem. You're going to become dependent on the sleep aid. With therapy, you could actually overcome the issue that you have with your sleep. Meditation, which you know that we teach, relaxation techniques. Sometimes it does require medication over the counter. I did look into studies that analyzed herbal remedies, and well, for some people, they have good results. It's inconclusive. So there is not an herb that is likely to work for everybody, okay? For some people, chamomile is very good, but for some people, it does not get any results or long-lasting results. This is a slide on sleep apnea, and I know that we're very familiar with that because it's something that is no longer a strange topic. It happens. What happens is your muscles on your throat have an issue with, you know, when you're sleeping, the muscles, they relax, right? And so if you can't breathe, right, because your muscles aren't relaxing, right, you could also, unfortunately, aspirate. You could die in your sleep. So it's very, very dangerous. There are different causes, okay? And so we have to be very careful sometimes to get diagnosed to make sure that what we have is either obstructed sleep apnea or not. And what are the treatments? For some people, this is, people refer to it as the disorder of people with overweight or obesity. Not always, but most cases do. So losing weight is the way to remedy it. Also getting a CPAP machine that helps them with the continuous airway pressure. Sometimes learning how to sleep better can change it. There are now dental devices that you can buy. You can actually just buy them on Amazon. You don't have to go to a doctor. And in some cases, when it's so obstructed, it does require surgery. So it can be pretty serious and it's life-threatening. So if you suspect that this is the case, you definitely need to see a sleep specialist. This is narcolepsy. And narcolepsy is not as common as sleep apnea or insomnia, but obviously it's a disorder, it's a neurological disorder in the brain, and usually you just feel excessively sleepy. So it's the contrary. It's not that you can't sleep, it's that you just can't stay awake. And at times it can cause you to hallucinate. So you might actually think that something's happening that isn't happening. Why do you think that is? The brain isn't getting any rest. It's not getting the 5 right cycles, so people can get hurt. It can be treated with stimulants. You do need to get these stimulants from your doctor. It can be treated also alongside stimulants with antidepressants, but again, you need to do that with your doctor because you don't want to have sleep paralysis. People have sometimes died in their sleep because they cannot feel and they can't speak and they can't awaken, and they are found unfortunately deceased. So it's called a sleep attack. And so it's very serious when you do have it. If you are on medication, you do need medical supervision. Last time we met, somebody was very smart and was, saying this disease and that. Well, yes, restless leg syndrome. Somebody mentioned restless leg syndrome. This is an incurable neurological disorder. And this is literally this, right? The shaking of your limb at night involuntarily. And because you're so exhausted and so fatigued, you can't sleep because of the restlessness. It's also the cause of, unfortunately, issues with couples, because when they sleep together, one person affects the other. So it can have relational complications. There are medications that will help it, okay? Some of them are medications that you would give to somebody with Parkinson's. And medications also that can be given for epilepsy can actually work here. If you don't want meds, meditation and relaxation and all kinds of de-stressing techniques can help with RLS. Obviously, it's much better for people that have this condition not to consume caffeine because it actually makes it worse. PLMD, unfortunately, you can't see that. It's a leg movement disorder, and much like the other disorder, it causes a lot of disruption because it causes involuntary kicking. This is a disorder that you don't know you have unless you actually are in a relationship sleeping with somebody else, because it's so subtle that you wouldn't know you have it, and if you sleep alone, you can't notice it. So most of it is often it's actually brought up by partners who say, did you know that this is happening all night long? It causes a lot of fatigue, you're tired all the time, and you're sleepy all the time. So it's important to check your antidepressants, your antihistamines, and antipsychotics, because they do cause PLMS. You have to be careful. Like the other disorders, caffeine is a bad contributor. They could change your antidepressant if you happen to have a depressive disorder and you're suffering. That doesn't mean you have to give it up. They might make an adjustment, either a reduction in the dosage or a change. Some of them have different effects. Again, in this particular disorder, anticonvulsant medication is also very helpful. And in cases of extreme PLMS, sometimes I've seen physicians prescribe small doses of tranquilizers, like Xanax, okay? I can't say that I'm in favor or not. That's a personal choice, and that should be something you consider with your physician. Because I'm always looking for alternatives, this is a slide that goes through what are the different things that you could do. Do you go for therapy or medication? And depending on the condition, your choices are different. What we know is that cognitive behavioral therapy can help with all of them. And in some cases, CBTI and medication, the right medication is the best combination. But that's a personal choice based on your personal medical information discussed with your doctor. So, relaxation tips up at the top, which you can't see. Aromatherapy actually is effective. Rose, sandalwood, lavender are the scents that are most effective in inducing sleep. In addition to that, obviously meditation, progressive muscle relaxation, which is a technique that we can show you if you don't know how to use it. We can go over that with you at the OEA. There's actually some very good YouTubes on it where you can actually sit and just mimic what you're seeing in the image. Practices of gratitude and loving kindness, meditations, and mindfulness can help. There are guided sleep meditations, lots of apps out there. For some people, prayer. For some people, intention setting. Anything that helps you to let go. Remember that the OEA is an option for you if you don't know how to do these practices and you need a little bit of guidance. In addition to that, do whatever you can to make the ambience around you better. You can't see it up there, but obviously be mindful of the temperature in your room, right? Ceiling fans, whether you have them on, whether you have them off, if you're somebody that actually has body heat issues, a fan could help you. If you're someone who tends to be cold, don't turn it on, right? Has anyone tried sleeping with a weighted blanket? They're amazing. A little expensive, but amazing. They give us the feeling that we're being held. It reproduces that feeling that we are being hugged, or the feeling that you had in the womb where you were safe and protected. So weighted blankets could help you. There's also just the cheaper ones that you can just plug in if you want an electric blanket. You could change your mattress topper if you can't afford to change your mattress. Believe it or not, a mattress can make a big deal in your life. I made an investment myself when I realized that all the other fixes weren't working. I changed my mattress and it reduced the issues significantly, but they're also very expensive. So as an alternative, you can use a mattress topper, which they now sell, and you can put it on top of your existing mattress. And if you look for the right features, it might do the trick. Like if you have body heat, you might buy one with gel that actually alleviates that. If you happen to be one of those people that gets cold, it will have, you know, some heating gels. You can find cheaper ways. There's also an acupressure mat that is also sold online, very cheap. You can get it on Amazon. If it's not that and it's sound, you can use noise canceling headphones. You can get cheap rubber ones at Walmart for $1 if you can't afford the expensive ones, but they do help. And sleep masks, good old sleep masks. They just work because they dim the room for you. This is a slide that talks about all the different aids that are out there. And we're living in a day and age where technology is moving at lightning speed. So what you don't see here is an image of a smart watch, whichever device. All the Fitbits, for the most part, work the same, but their later models are so much better. And the same for the iPhone watch. They're just great. The iWatch you can see so many things now about your sleep that it almost mimics a polysomnograph. It's amazing what you can find out. Some people say, well, you know, what's the difference between a wearable and a non-wearable device? That you see up there is a non-wearable device. That's actually, that's an iPad to which this is connected. You see that white piece of fabric that goes under your mattress, right under where you sleep. And it's actually monitoring your movement. And so it reports it at the end. You put a plug in and you get your report. But it's expensive. And if you move too far out of the bed, it doesn't track you. So the wearable devices might be the better way to go. You have to do your own research, and depending on what your wallet can afford. These are 3 programs, and again, you'll see them on the slide, that are the best ones that the Sleep Association has recommended. If you want to actually use an app and you want to send the data from your smartphone, you can send it and it can track it for you. It's Pillow, Melodies, and I forget what this one is, but they're the ones that they recommend are the best from their consumer reports. I'm doing good on time, so we have time for questions. I know we went through a lot of information, but I think by now you've realized just how important sleep is. That it's just not a nice thing to do, but that we have a problem, we're not owning it. Do you remember what the most important thing to do is as you're looking at your day ahead to do as it relates to your sleep? We said there's something very important. We all know that it's very important to sleep, but it's not a priority. We talked about something that we had to do, that we had to think about our sleep differently. Does anyone remember what we talked about? Now that you know how much of this you control, what do you need to do different for tomorrow, beginning today? What was that? Plan your sleep. Don't just plan what you're going to wear, right? You don't want to just look good. You want to feel good. So depending on what your day looks like tomorrow, you start thinking today, okay, tomorrow I have my first meeting at 8, and I'm going to be facing traffic, which means I need to leave the house at this time, which means I need a minimum of this hour of sleep. So based on that, I'm going to bed a half an hour earlier. It's actually being mindful before you wake up with the sleep deprivation. How do you think I'm going to walk into that 8 a.m. meeting if I didn't plan right? Possibly a little groggy, right? Might need an extra cup of coffee. Well, remember what caffeine does to you. It's a double-edged sword, right? It helps you, it stimulates you, but then you're wired all day long. So remember, you have total control over your well-being. It starts with being mindful, just paying a little bit of attention to the body so that you don't have to suffer later. Don't resort to medication anytime sooner than you actually evaluate what the issue could be. The sleep issue that you're facing may not be a sleep problem. It may be a symptom of a different problem. There are people who have chronic medical diseases that cause sleep issues. You don't want to medicate the sleep problem until you realize whether you actually have a true medical condition. Are there any questions that we need to answer, Nathan? Anything in the room?
I have a question.
Absolutely.
You talked about listening to your body. And,
Yes.
You know, when you're tired.
Yes.
If you can go to sleep earlier.
Give in.
That. Okay. So, for example, like I typically have a set bedtime that I do. Now, if I have a tough day and I'm tired and I fall asleep earlier, what happens is I wake up earlier.
Yes.
It's almost like my body, like I already said, like
I'm done.
used to sleeping 7 hours.
Yes.
And then it's like, so then I'm laying in bed, I can't go back to sleep. It's too early to really get started. I mean, I could get up and do things, but that means that I'm just gonna be more tired by the end
You
of the
actually
day.
have a great example, and I appreciate that you brought it up. That's where you need to use your judgment. Because if you're literal and you take my advice literally, you are gonna actually create a new issue. If it's so far ahead of your regular, push it a little bit. I mean, giving in at the right time, not giving in at 5 o'clock when you're in a meeting, because that's not gonna work. So in that particular case, you need to stretch it, push it a little bit closer to the norm so that you don't throw your cycle off. I understand what you're asking, but that would be a literal interpretation. If I give in to every sleep, feeling sensation that I have, I might actually be sleeping in my car on the way to work, on the way home, and that would be a problem.
I mean, I typically try, like, there are days when, like, if I'm watching something boring, like, I'll want to sleep at 8, but then I try to push it to maybe 10
Yes.
instead of 11.
Yes.
Because then I'll be up at 3 o'clock
Yes.
in the morning.
Yeah, and then that will defy the logic. Nathan, you had something.
So if I remember 4 distinct dreams during the night, does that suggest I went through 4 full sleep cycles?
Not necessarily. No. And the other thing is that recollection of dreams is a little unreliable. So it's very difficult. Sometimes we think we've dreamt longer than we did. I, believe it or not, did my thesis in dream studies, so that's how I know just a little bit about it. They fool you. You sometimes feel you've been asleep for a very long time and the dream is maybe a minute long, but it felt like an hour. So the answer is not necessarily. Perhaps, but not necessarily. Yes?
How come it says if you're more tired if I sleep 10 to 11 hours as opposed to 7 to 9?
That's a good question. The question is, how can you possibly feel more tired after just having had normal rest? Or if you actually rested more? Well, I think that you started the new cycle. The thing is, the body's going to start the cycle of sleep regardless of whether you get the right amount or the lesser amount. So your body's just naturally taking you in the direction that it was going to go. And that's hard because those days are exceptions, right? Where you're like, oh my God, what's the right amount, right? I actually slept a little bit more and now I feel more tired. It's because the body, goes into its cycle regardless of whatever you do. That cycle is just like sun up, sundown. There's nothing you can do about it. Yes, Nathan?
So if I happen to wake up only an hour or so before my alarm, is it better to try to go back to sleep or just wake up?
It's better to go back to sleep. Because if you miss that last cycle, you will have missed the reset button. And you will wake up with only 4 bars and not 5 bars on your device. And by device, I mean your body. If you can. I know that it is not always easy to do, but the best thing to do is to lay in your bed, close your eyes, focus on your breath, and go back to sleep. I know because I do that all the time. Obviously, you know how much time I spend with my breath because of all the meditation that I do. And whenever I awaken, I don't even get to my 3rd breath when I knock myself back out. It's amazing what this can do. You have a lot of power. Don't run for a medication. Don't run for a solution. Try to moderate your own body. Anybody else?
If during that hour, are you able to fall back into a deep sleep and then the alarm wakes you and you feel worse, or where will you start at with your
No.
cycles?
If you are awakened by your alarm at the regular time and you actually got back to your sleep, you will wake up at the regular round. Nothing will be disrupted. There's another question in the back.
Yeah. When it comes to blood work and figuring out if somebody's monitoring, what a regular blood work.
No.
You have to ask.
You have to ask specifically for things related to sleep. Because these are not regular labs. Folic acid is a special order, magnesium is a special order, so if they just run a regular lab, it will not be detected. So it's very important that you be very vocal when you see your PCP and describe what your issues are so that they know. And you might say, I'm interested in finding out if I actually have a sleep disorder. Could you request special testing? And by the way, it is covered by insurance. Anybody else? Yes.
When you wake up like in the middle of like a nightmare, those horrible ones,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to go back to sleep
It is.
without going back to the same images, I guess, in your mind, like what's going on. Like, not even like going to the restroom because like at that time I didn't want to look in the mirror because I think I'm gonna like see everything there.
Yeah.
So like, what is it besides reading? I guess.
I have to tell you the truth. It's going to be the simplest answer, and you're not going to believe me, but it is the truth. You sit somewhere to regulate your breath. Sit in your bed, plop a pillow up, and then slide down as you start getting relaxed. You will be able to go. And by the way, you actually can counter. This is what my thesis was. You can actually counter your dreams. You can go back into sleep and say, I do not want to dream. I don't want to pick up where I left off. And you will go back to it. I know that it sounds unbelievable, but it's actually true. If you work on your breath, if you close your eyes, and if you, as an affirmation, I will not go back to that sleep. Whatever words you want to use, you won't go back. You'll go to sleep and you'll go back to sleep peacefully. The breath is very powerful. You could say something like, I'm going to give you a better mantra. I am safe. I am safe. Very easy, right? It doesn't require a lot of brain power. I don't want you to get stimulated. So if you're panic stricken, you can put your hand over your heart and say, I am safe. Practice your breathing, 3 breaths, I am safe. Not out loud, in your mind, you know, your silent voice, and you will go back to sleep and you will not go back to that dream. You can actually send messages to your brain. It is listening. I know, so is your phone, by the way. But seriously speaking, you actually can do that because I've done it. I can do it and I don't have any super magical powers. We have a lot of say into what our brain does and doesn't do. We sometimes think we don't, but we actually do. Try it and let me know if it works.
Can they really be like the result of your like stress during the day?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Things that we don't allow ourselves to give any time to will creep up in our time of rest. Yes, Nathan.
So one individual is asking for either an example or an explanation of how to utilize the breath when going to bed and trying to fall asleep.
The best thing I can tell you, given that we're out of time, is either send your information to Nathan or Nathan can give it to me and I'll send you a meditation that actually will induce sleep with breath. But it takes time and there's not an easy answer. There are people who take a lot longer to go to sleep. Now, you know you want to go to sleep between 15 and 20 minutes. But there are meditations out there in the market that you can actually either get on an app or you can YouTube and you can find one that will go through your entire 8 hours that will play in the background. There are some that actually are just sounds, and there's a specific one out in the market right now that has a sound that has proven to put anyone to sleep. So whoever this is, please send Nathan the question in an email and I'll follow it up with an answer and I'll send you a link so you can try it. There's not an answer for everybody because we don't all go to sleep at the same time. Last question? Yes. 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 Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes. You have not yet, but I want to empower you to think that you actually can. Focus on your breath. Go back to the breathing. Think about, see your third eye, the one right here when you're asleep, and focus your breath into that space and only that. And as your thoughts wander, come back to that third eye in your breath. Over time, you will stop hearing it. You're paying attention to the sound and not to the breath. If you come back to the breath, the sound will go away. It just takes a lot of discipline and belief that it could actually work. Give it a shot. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate the energy here and on Zoom. We hope that you've learned a few good things. And if you have specific questions that we didn't get a chance to answer, send them to Nathan. And either Nathan or I or both of us will get back to you today. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.